All right, hello folks. Today we're doing breakfast for dinner, and I'm going to have two preparations. One's going to be a breakfast sandwich, the other one's going to be a mushroom and cheese omelet. I would imagine the majority of you are quite comfortable making omelets and doing simple grilled cheese, bacon, lettuce, tomato, and egg sandwich, but I thought I'd show you the technique of how we are doing it here in the instructional kitchen. On your meal kits, you're going to have oil, and just going to put a small amount of oil in the skillet and allow that to come to a bit of a shimmer. And once you've achieved that, you're going to saute the mushrooms that have been previously sliced. These are cremini mushrooms, and we're going to allow those to sweat until they are fully cooked. Some ingredients you have: you're going to have 3 eggs to make this omelet with, some scallion parsley. The tomato and the leaf parsley are going to be used for an accent garnish at the end for the plating process. For the breakfast sandwich, I have taken the liberty to pre-butter the bread. You have a 3 tablespoon measure of whole butter in your preparation kits, and I've simply just buttered the bread on one side. I'm going to put that on the flat top griddle. If you don't have a griddle at home, just use a skillet, which works out just as nicely for that purpose. Mushrooms are simply just going to sweat a bit until they render out the majority of the water. This is a significant amount of water. About 75% of that mushroom is actual water weight. So getting that water to extract from there before we add scallions and or parsley. A little bit of that parsley, if we're going to put it in that skillet, is going to be reserved for an accent garnish on the plate along with the leaf parsley. So as those are cooking, I'm going to mill some black pepper into the skillet with the mushrooms to give it a nice lift. It's a little bit of heat and a little bit of milled salt. And that salt's going to help break down the cells in that mushroom to help cook it a little bit more efficiently. You want to have a nice golden color like you see on this mushroom. All those mushrooms should have that nice golden hue to it to really get the best flavor out of that mushroom possible. And this is showing a little bit of smoke, and that's okay. As long as you're not burning the food product, everything's going to be just fine. And getting a good heat on there to apply the transfer of water out of the mushroom and evaporates because of the skillet's hot enough to allow it to vaporize. Once I start to see a nice shine on those mushrooms and it has a kind of a polished, waxed look to it, it's about the time I'm going to put in the chopped scallions, which we have cut. If not cut, then you have them nice and thin sliced so that they cook relatively efficiently. And you're going to get a nice aromatic from those scallions once they're added to the skillet. And then you have a measure of parsley. I'm going to use the large majority of that parsley in that mixture, reserving the balance of it for an accent garnish. Cheese is going to be used toward the end. So as these mushrooms are cooking, the parsley just adds a little bit of flavor to it, as well as a good visual. And I'll let those cook a little further. A flat spatula is good to check that bread. This grill is not very hot, and I may end up having to do this in a skillet just to be able to get this to move along a little bit more efficiently. But for the process of getting this breakfast sandwich started, we're going to have a little spread of mayonnaise on each side of the opposite side of the buttered bread. And just get that coast to coast, edge to edge, corner to corner. You can opt out on the mayo if you choose. It's really not a necessity, but it sure does make another layer of flavor for that sandwich. After that, we're going to put on slices of cheddar, one on top of each of those slices. On top of those slices, we're going to put a nice leaf lettuce, which has been crisped up to some extent If it's not, just put it in a little ice water to get it crisp again. I'll come back to the mushroom. Make sure that they're all nice and golden brown. And once they've achieved that nice golden color, I'm going to turn the heat off and allow those to just rest in a warm place. So that's the key fundamental to making a very flavorful flavor inside that omelet, is to have those mushrooms cooked. After I put those lettuce on there, I'm going to put 2 tomatoes on each slice of lettuce. Right? That's the process for that. Now, going back to the omelet, we have an omelet skillet. This is about 8 inches in diameter, and it's been treated so it has an opportunity to release the egg from the surface of the skillet. This is going to be a 3-egg omelet. Just simply crack that egg into a stainless steel bowl, and using a soft whisk is going to allow us to homogenize those eggs. So kind of a soft whisk that's kind of bouncy would be best. One that has a little bit of bounce to it. I'm just going to beat those eggs till they're nice and frothy. Some folks will put a little bit of liquid dairy in that egg, but it just extends it a little bit. But I want it to be a nice rich flavor of whisked egg. So it should be kind of bubbly by the time we get done whisking it, so it has a good view. If you can take a shot at looking at this inside of this bowl, you'll see it kind of bubbly, and that's what we're trying to achieve here. Nice and frothy. Once achieved that, we're going to season the eggs with a little bit of milled salt, milled pepper, a little bit of oil on the surface of the egg skillet, and allow that oil to get hot enough to almost shimmer. Make sure you have oil around the edges of the skillet. And we're simply going to add those whisked eggs to that pan. It shouldn't be so hot that when you add the eggs to the skillet, they start to bounce and make a bunch of noise. It should be nice and gentle. At that point, you're going to need a rubber spatula to be able to start working the eggs. So it'll start to coagulate around the edges of the pan almost immediately as it hits that warmed up skillet. And all I'm going to do is have the soft spatula, this heat resistant, kind of tilt the skillet so that the eggs will run to the edges in a manner that it expands the diameter of the omelet a bit, still keeping those eggs nice and light. So as I tilt, I move some of the coagulated egg out of the way, allowing that liquid egg to spread to those surfaces. It's already been seasoned, salt and pepper, has a good flavor to it. These are nice AA graded eggs. They are large in size, ideal for these skillet type preparations. Some of that liquid egg, help it to the edge as needed. So you have that surface of the egg all the way around. Allow that to move along. Now that skillet should be warm enough that you can pretty much have that egg move around a little bit in the skillet. So let it rest. While it's resting, I pre-cooked some bacon so it's tender and crisp. You're going to put a slice, 2 slices on one side and 1 slice split on another side, okay? That's the process for that. Now that this egg has solidified, you can see it kind of moving in the skillet, has a chance to be lifted. I'm going to pour a little bit of that egg underneath, as you can see. Lost some of my heat. Allow that heat to stay nice and gentle so that majority of that liquid mass has solidified. I'm going to get the spatula underneath the egg and just kind of simultaneously lift it to flip it over. So I have this nice light, barely colored egg matter that's getting finished. That liquidy egg particles are now being cooked on the other side, allowing that to cook for just a few seconds, and then returning it by flipping it over, using that spatula as an aid to be able to make that flip over. At that point, you're going to sprinkle in some of the cheddar jack cheese. I would go edge to edge with that cheddar jack. It'll naturally melt on its own. Taking some of those sauteed mushrooms that we did earlier and placing them on top of the cheese. Enough to be able to make 2 nice omelets. And then we're going to take that off the fire and start to do a little bit of a fold process, allowing that egg to just gently have a third of a fold over on that while it's in the skillet. And now I have that third folded over. I'm going to simply allow it, the top of that, to flip over to make that omelet fold in half, or you can tri-fold that omelet so it has a finished look to it. Meanwhile, while we finish this omelet off, I'm going to preheat the skillet for the 2 eggs that we're going to cook over medium. I'm going to check my temperature of my griddle, turn it up even more because it's just not getting hot. It takes a long time for this thick steel plate to get hot. So that's one of those takeaways. So to garnish this omelet, mushroom and cheese omelet, I'm going to use a little bit of flat leaf parsley, a couple of wedges of tomatoes, and a little pinch of that parsley that we held behind for that finished mushroom and cheese omelet. Very similar to what you probably have made at home in the past. I'm going to return that skillet to the fire just to be able to expedite the cooking process of this sandwich so that I get a nice golden color. We're getting there, but I want to have a nice heat to it. So I'm going to use the skillet to heat it up just as I would if I was at home. So this little egg skillet, I'm going to have a low temperature on it, pretty much the same as it was for the omelet. Enough oil to be able to have surface covered and a little bit of oil and allow it to go to the edges. So we have a chance for that coagulated egg to move around a little bit. For that, I'm going to crack 2 eggs for this sandwich. I like to crack them on the counter so I have a nice even clean break and I don't get a lot of shell particles in the finish of the cracked egg. I want to keep them whole. So if one breaks, crack your eggs ahead of time. You have a better shot at being able to keep those eggs whole. And then in that hot oil, you can just simply add the 2 eggs. And they're going to immediately start to coagulate. And the whites are going to start to firm up, solidify. We're going to garnish this one with a couple of orange wedges, which are a nice treat at the breakfast meal period. Fresh fruit's always a good choice to have, natural sugars. That bread's starting to get nice color on it. Having a nice golden color would be even better. So having the right temperature of the grill or using your skillet to be able to get that nice golden color on that bread would be ideal. I'm going to season these eggs, a little salt and pepper, not overkill, but just enough to be able to give it some flavor. And the whites are still nice and shiny. We want to get those whites fairly well cooked. This is going to be better if I was going to eat it in a over medium stage so that the yolks are cooked to about a medium stage. They're not too runny so it doesn't drip all over my clothes. At this point, that egg should be nice and loose in the skillet and just using wrist action to flip that egg over. You can practice that with a piece of bread in a skillet. to flip that bread over as a test before you even start the whole cooking process, to be able to get that egg to flip over nice and easy. So now I've got a little more color on the bread, feeling better. Cutting board to be able to slice this sandwich in half should be readily available once we get done. So now that we have our bread slices that have been nicely toasted on both sides, it's been layered with mayonnaise and cheese. I want to allow this egg to cook long enough so that the yolk is semi-firm. So again, it doesn't make a drippy mess when we go to eat it. It's certainly your option to have that egg cooked very liquid-like yolk if you enjoy it like that, but it's really your option. So once you've got it cooked to an over medium state, at that point you're ready to go finish building the sandwich. Simply lay the eggs coming directly out of the skillet onto the surface of that bread, and then lay this layer on top. And then we provided you with a couple of picks to be able to secure that sandwich together. Sometimes in restaurants I would have like a grape tomato or something to accent garnish this, a nice Mediterranean olive on there to be able to give it another lift. Some of that nice briny flavor of the Mediterranean olive would be a wonderful addition to that meal. Simply splitting that sandwich in half. I use a serrated knife because I got a better shot of being able to slice and saw through that than a straight edge. You're going to have to apply pressure to get through that breakfast egg sandwich. Then simply plating that up so you can see the interior of that beautiful breakfast sandwich with all those layers of flavor with the egg all nicely cooked. And I'm going to accent garnish that with a couple of wedges of orange to be able to finish that dish off. So that's our breakfast for dinner today. Bacon, lettuce, tomato, and egg sandwich accented with fresh orange, and then a mushroom and cheese omelet accented with fresh plum tomato and some parsley. Enjoy.